All right, Bri, I'll put you on the spot. What's the one thing in your money mindset you think you need to change?
Getting over the guilt and saying, no, I really, really wanted to have everybody together. And my wife and I, we set money aside, we saved for it, and we did that. And in the end, we ended up getting it gifted to us. But it was really important to me that we at least had that money to spend on it, because I felt so bad about wanting to have that party when I shouldn't have felt bad about that. I mean, it's my wedding, and the whole point of it was to have fun and invite people and be around people that we love and love us. And so doing things for me when I really want them and having the people I really want together, I need to get over the guilt of that, because that kind of ate me alive for the longest amount of time. Welcome to the Childfree Wealth Podcast, hosted by Bri and Dr. J, certified financial planner. Here we discuss life and finances as it relates to being child-free. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please consult your advisor before implementing any ideas heard on this podcast.
Hey, Childfree Wealth listeners. Today we're going to be talking about money mindsets. And money mindsets are really kind of like built by the way you were raised, the way your family talked about money, what they had, what they didn't have. And we often don't realize how much this impacts your life. You know, there's just things that were like ingrained in us, sometimes positive, sometimes negative, that we don't realize. And if you have a spouse, don't forget you have two different money mindsets. Even if you came up in like the same town, you probably still have two different money mindsets. Like there's just different ways that people talk about money, the way they use money, the way they live with it. And most of this is unconscious. So it's stuff that we just don't even realize where it fits. And as we kind of dive into this, there's a couple of questions I'm going to ask Bri, and we're going to work through it. Good ones for you to ask. If you want to dive into money mindsets and you're really kind of interested in it, Carl Richard has a podcast called 100 Fires, and he does a lot of work with this on asking some really cool questions. And I'm going to ask Bri kind of the first one he asks, or one of the first ones he asks, which is, Bri, what was your first money memory? What was your first memory of money in your life?
Oh, actually, I got this one.
Make it sound like it's a quiz, like you can fail it.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I was trying to think. I was like, I don't know. I was like, I can think of a lot of different ones. And now I remember it very clearly. So little town where our farm is, and the banker, his name was John. And I saw him all the time, like whenever I'd be out. He passed a few years ago. But just like seeing him and seeing his wife always when I was little, it was awesome, because I knew if I saw him, he was going to give me quarters. And I felt like the richest kid on the planet to just get those 4 quarters from him. And whenever I'd go, he'd be like, oh, hey, how are you doing? And then he'd pull out some quarters from his pocket and give them to me. And I think that was probably my first memory of anything to do with money, is just getting those quarters from him.
I want somebody that's just going to randomly give me quarters for saying hi. But I guess I don't know if this is like one of those like family stories that you don't know if like it's your memory or just everybody telling you about it. Like always one of those weird ones. But growing up, my grandfather was selling Christmas trees. Now, literally we would go cut them down and sell them. It was a pretty cool little business to do, and family all helped. But I was about 5, and I decided at the Christmas tree shop to start selling pine cones, because people make wreaths and need pine cones to go with it. And for some reason, I had already figured out the price of labor. I charged 5 cents a pine cone if I picked it up, or 2 cents a pine cone if they picked it up. Like, like no place covered pine cones. But hey, I guess I had the business sense at that time. Nobody was just giving me free quarters, but, started selling pine cones. And this sounds funny, but like those first memories around money start setting the mindset, and kind of working that through. And it sets a framework. So, all right, Bri, you had quarters. Did your family talk about their finances with you, or was it kind of like a secret, or how was it handled in home?
I always knew that there was money. I didn't exactly know how much, and I was very much child. Like I grew up very religious. We are stewards of money. We are God's stewards of money. We are supposed to use that in a way that pleases him and blesses him and does good for the world. So there was always that narrative. It was, you should not be greedy. You should not ask. Like, you are given what you are given and you work hard for that. It was talked about, but it was never transparent as to what all existed.
That's fair. In my family, it was talked about, but we were broke. We didn't have extra money. And I remember a lot as a kid, you got gifts for your birthday, Christmas, new shoes for the school year. Anything else you wanted, you got to go work for it. You know, I had a paper out, I don't know, 12-ish, 10, 12, I don't know what it was, started earning my own money, just kind of the way it was. And one of the things that my parents taught me, you were talking about, you know, kind of the steward money is kind of what you were taught. I was taught, whatever you are, be the best at it. And it's one of those like that I've been unpacking across my life because it's both positive and negative. You know, it is an encouragement, but that whatever you do to be the best at it is that mindset that then becomes, well, you got to get the A, you got to get the star, you got to, you know, achieve, where you can't really settle for less. And it's one of those things that I've been over time struggling with, because it's like either I'm going to be the best at it or I'm not going to do it at all. And that's not great. Like it's just kind of a balancing act. And I don't think people think about the negative that comes with some of that. I mean, Bri, you were talking about some of the religious concepts. Did that have a positive or negative impact on you today?
I think a bit of both. I do really struggle. I love to give, but I also struggle with the fact that, you know, my wife and I are very different when it comes to religion. And so we don't tithe to a church, that 10%. And there's definitely some guilt that comes with that. We give money in other ways. And like, I am more than happy to give money if somebody asks me to for different things. But there's still a guilt feeling of like, I'm not giving that 10% to the church like I should be. And that's kind of hard.
Do you want to work through it, or are you just going to deal with it for the rest of your life?
No, I've been working through it in my own way.
And I asked that question because that is the question. Like, yep, that's baggage. Do you want to work through it or not? You know, can I forget it? Can I let it go? Or is it something me and my spouse need to work through, or I need to work through? And just the awareness of, hey, here's some of the ways I was raised, here's what it is. It becomes this question about like, what did you learn that was positive? What did you learn that was negative? And where do you want to go with it? And with money, I tend to find it's a lot like people that have addictions. So I grew up with quite a few people who had alcoholic parents. And when you had alcoholic parents, you either never drank or you went down the same alcoholic path. Like there was nowhere in between. And that's probably not always the case, but that was like just my experience. But I think it's the same way with money. Either you're like, nope, I'm going to be perfect with my money, or I'm just going to always be in debt and always like be it. Like the path you were taught or what you saw determines it. I mean, you know, my parents were broke, paycheck to paycheck. Budget was not really a discussion. And I started living that way because I didn't know any other path. I actually got lucky, I'm going to call it that. So when I was just coming out of high school, I was 19, 20, something like that. And I was working for a company selling internet, and I posted my resume on this job site on the internet. This was like mid 90s, by the way. That was like really, really surprising. And got a call for a job in New York City. And this guy says, oh, why don't you come down for an interview? I said, okay, fine. The place I went down to the interview was at 100 Wall Street. So you got to see this 19-year-old kid going down to New York City. I'd never been there besides for like a school field trip. I go down to this company. They want me to do a sales job. Got lucky, got the job. Actually ended up at a couple different companies in the internet. And what ended up happening is one of them went IPO, and I made my first million by the time I was 21. Now, unfortunately, when you give a 21-year-old $1 million, they're going to spend it. Now, I gave some to the family. I helped people. I did buy a original or Arnold Schwarzenegger type Hummer, the old school military style Hummer. I bought that for cash. the joke, but it's true. It was earned it by the time I was 21, spent it by the time I was 25 because I hadn't learned money habits. You spend what you got, and if you want more, you just go get more. And if you don't get more, you don't get to spend more. And like that was my money mindset for much of my life until I realized, oh, there's something different. So it's funny. It was kind of like a weird thing. So I got married. Wife has a different money mindset. That's fine. I'm going to be transparent. I don't tell my wife's stories. That's hers to tell. But I'll talk about mine. And we were living together, and she had a car, and she had a loan on it, and we paid off the car. And I was like, wait, you can do that? Like I had always just bought a new car every 2 years, rolled the loan over to the next one, and just kind of kept the payment going up. And I was like, oh, you can pay off a car and not have a loan. And that like blew my brain. Like I never thought that was possible. I would always thought, well, if you can afford the payment, you can afford the car. And I actually ended up in the Dave Ramsey world and looking at the debt-free life and truly embraced the debt-free life. And that's my way of going. But that was kind of the start of like a different mindset around money. Now, I don't know, it wasn't really a conscious plan to change my mindset around money, but like things in life made it different. The people go, well, don't you wish you had that money mindset back when you got $1 million? Maybe, but I might not have had as much fun. Let's be honest with that, and I think you kind of need to make some mistakes to then learn how to do it differently. I mean, did you have any of those moments across your life?
Yeah. I've been very transparent about this in the past is I did not have any loans from college, cars or anything like that. All of that was covered by my family. But there was a semester in which I left school at one point, and it was medical, and I ended up getting a full refund of all of it. And then I get that money in my bank account, and I go and I took half of it, that tuition, and I was going back to college the next semester. But I went and bought furniture, and I remember just going to the bank and taking that out and going and buying furniture with it. It was so dumb. I spent that next semester because I was like, I can't tell anybody that I've just taken that money and spent it on furniture. Like I'm going to be in so much trouble if I do that. So I figured out there was a payment plan, and I could pay every single month that next semester and pay my tuition. So that's what I did. And it sucked because it was like 50% of my income every month. And I was working my butt off trying to just make these payments. And it was a wake up call. Like, I worked all throughout high school and made money there. And I was never allowed to spend any of that money. It all just went into savings for me. And then I got access to it when I graduated from high school and had that for college. But it was definitely a wake up call to then, I never had to question where money was going to come from. It was just like, okay, I have it and I can spend it, but then to take and spend it on furniture when I really should have been spending it on my tuition that next semester, and then having to work twice as hard to pay for college really sucked. That was not a good time in life, but I made it through and it worked out in the end.
But was it at least nice furniture or like?
It was when we bought it, but now after like a year or two, it sucked. We sold it, and it was just, I would never buy that type of furniture again.
Let's be real. We came up from different schools of thought around money, different situations, different things. And I've struggled with my money mindset overall. And when I was writing my book, the Childfree Guide to Life and Money, I had a really tough time for about a month because my editor made a note and said, hey, check your privilege. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Okay. I came up with nothing. Every penny I've made, I kind of got like sassy about it. Let's call it that. But at the same time, I was like, how do I talk about money and talk about how to improve your mindsets and all that without talking about privilege? And like, I don't know. Yes, I'm a white male. There's some privilege comes with that. Awesome. I agree. Also, been broke, been poor, been struggling. I've earned what I've gotten. Yes, other people have other barriers. I agree. But like there becomes this like guilt thing around money, or I don't know what around privilege. And Bri and I talked about this ad nauseum. Let's be real on it. Like I was bugging her quite a bit about it. And your advice was like, just acknowledge your privilege and move forward. And I'm like, yeah, but, and like we're months later, actually we're probably about a year later, and the book's coming out, and I'm still kind of trying to understand my own mindsets around privilege and money. But like, how do you look at money and privilege?
I definitely struggle with a lot of guilt for it at times because I've been given multiple advantages throughout life, and I understand and I'm learning to understand more, especially this year, a lot more of the things that I didn't know, which has brought upon guilt in a whole new way for me. But also it is the fact that I can't sit here and sit in this guilt to the point where I never do anything for others and never help them. And so having those conversations and having conversations about money of just like, hey, these are the things that we can do, taking that knowledge that I have learned and I have gained throughout the years and using that to move forward. And so my grandparents in particular, both of them were very financially savvy, both sides. But the one side, it was every time we got money for birthdays, Christmas, anything like that, we were always instructed that at least 50% of it had to go towards savings. And I was having a conversation with my grandma this summer here, and she had asked me, she's like, what did you do with the money when Grandpa died that I gave you? And she's like, I know I gave everybody suggestions of what I'd like you to do with it. And I said, oh yeah, I just went and invested that and put that in my retirement account. And so I did that, and I saved that entire check that she had given us. And even now, I just had my birthday a few weeks ago, and she gave me money, and it's sitting here on my desk, and I'm having such a hard time spending all of it. I'm like, okay, I know I can spend all of it now because we're meeting the rest of our financial goals, but still I'm like, I need to save half of it. Like I can't just spend all that because, it comes from grandma. You're not allowed to spend all of it. It has to be saved. And I had a piggy bank that was save, spend, donate, invest. There were those 4 different things in there. So for me, it is acknowledging that privilege, still trying to hang on to some of those habits of saving, and then also donating as well and giving money back. There are a lot of things that I like to do for different people. And whether they be people I know or people I don't, one of the things I love to do is sponsor classrooms and buy books for classrooms. And so I often do that. Those things help me feel a little bit less guilty about the privilege that I have because they're helping other people. And I really believe education is such a needed and such an important thing. And that's why I use giving money to classrooms and buying books as classrooms as my coping mechanism for privilege a lot.
That's not weird, by the way. I mean, like a lot of folks, when they get a lot of money, the answer is, I'm just going to give it away to make, kind of soothe my soul. And I'm like, maybe we could just deal with the real issue rather than that is the truth of it. Like, I would rather you give just to give because that's where your heart is rather than just being guilt giving. Like the one that drove me crazy, I haven't been there in a long time, but used to go to the movies and people would like come around with a guilt, like with a jar, like taking donations at the movies. And I was like, that was guilt because you're on a date and you have to give money when you're on a date because otherwise you're going to look like guilt giving to me is not what we should be doing. It should be something we want to do with our soul.
Yeah, I view like those checkout things at places like, oh, do you want to round up? Like that to me is guilt giving. And I have no problem saying no to that. Like I say no all the time. But now it's kind of gotten to the point where I'm like, I have the certain things that I like to give to, and I will do those repeatedly. And other things I just don't give to. If I have this, and I was back to the religion thing, like I have this, I was blessed with this, and now I need to be a good steward of that and use that money wisely. And for me, part of using that money wisely, and it does make me feel better about it too, is giving that and helping classrooms and helping advance education for others.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm not judging you. I'm just kind of having fun with it. I think the guilt giving, you're right. At a supermarket, at the roundup. Yeah, no, like Also, by the way, I'm now embracing. Somebody said, if I'm standing up to order food, I'm not giving you a tip. I was like, ooh, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Like, some of the giving, the tip, we got some big issues. But I think the hard part is if you don't do the work on your money mindset, it's never going away. We'll talk to clients about the scarcity mindset and like living in the rent and ramen phase. I've seen people with tens of millions of dollars still feel like living like they're broke. We talk about the blueberry problem where, they're buying the frozen blueberries because they're $1 cheaper than the fresh blueberries. And I'm like, just buy the damn blueberries. You're fine. But their mindset can't get around it. And it's funny because it's so ingrained in us. People go, well, if I get to X dollars, then I'll be okay. If I get to $1 million, I'll be okay. If I make $100,000 a year, I get to whatever. And every time they get to it, they just keep kicking it down the road because they don't want to deal with it. And what happens is that money mindset stuff starts impacting the way you invest, the way you save, the way you give, why you enjoy your money. And we have to like unprogram it. And we also have to watch our own biases. So we had actually just recorded before this podcast on open enrollment. And one of my personal biases, because when I was growing up, my mother was sick, we always had healthcare bills, is you always get the good health care insurance. So in actuality, all my clients are suffering from my own money mindsets around health insurance. Now, by the way, I still think it's the right thing to do, but like it comes across, we're a no debt organization. We don't think it's a good thing to use. That comes across, that comes out of my experience. It does drive the way you look at the world, but we don't take the time to kind of think through it and work through it. I mean, all right, Bri, I'll put you on the spot. What's the one thing in your money mindset you think you need to change?
I think guilt over the little things that I don't know if it's necessarily the little things. So if you listen to the Childfree midlife crisis episode, you heard me essentially break down and kind of start crying about needing to have a wedding party. And
you mean the wedding party you didn't invite me to?
Yes, that one.
Oh.
I had a lot of guilt over it because we did a destination wedding and it was a lot of fun. And I wanted to do a party again. I wanted to have everybody together, but I felt bad spending money on that because we had already spent a ton. And we were also, I should say, we were gifted a lot to pay for the destination wedding, all of that. And it was, I will just say it was 10 figures, multiple 10 figures that were spent on not only our wedding party, but then again, our wedding as well. And I felt very, very guilty to even do that. And, so I said, I want to have a wedding party, but I felt bad saying that I wanted to have a wedding party when I already had a really nice wedding. And I shouldn't do both of these. Getting over the guilt and saying, no, I really, really wanted to have everybody together. And my wife and I, we set money aside, we saved for it, and we did that. And then we ended up getting it gifted to us. But it was really important to me that we at least had that money to spend on it, because I felt so bad about wanting to have that party when I shouldn't have felt bad about that. I mean, it's my wedding, and the whole point of it was to have fun and invite people and be around people that we love and love us. And so doing things for me when I really want them and having the people I really want together, I need to get over the guilt of that, because that kind of ate me alive for the longest amount of time.
Guilt and money, man. There's so much there. Let's be honest with that. Like, how am I comfortable with my money when other people in my family are struggling? And can I help them? Should I help them? I've decided I don't give cash to anyone in the family, but I will help them, buy their groceries or pay their medical bills. But is that okay? And is it okay to enjoy your money when other people are struggling? This is stuff that we all have to work through. Otherwise, money becomes just a burden, or, you can't really enjoy it. It's hard. And I think the challenge is most people don't realize consciously where their money mindset comes from. It's kind of like I just always have. I've always been this. And you'll just hear that. I'm like, cool. You got 50 more years in life. Do you always want to do that still? Like, and you're like, well, but I can't change that. Well, no, you can. Like we'll talk to people about their jobs. Like, well, I've gone up the ladder. I've struggled. I've done all this. I can't quit my job. Like, it's making you miserable. It's going to make you have a heart attack and die. Like, quit your job. Like, well, but I'll let down so-and-so. That's okay. Like, seriously. The reality check is, if you're living your life, you're trying to like impress somebody else, especially family members, there's probably nothing you can do that will 100% make them happy. So if they're not going to make them 100% happy, just do what you want. And because we're child-free, we've chosen a different life. And that means we have a different relationship with our money. We have different expectations. We have different money mindsets. They should be different. Things like you got to buy a house. So been having this discussion with a lot of folks of like renting versus buying. And they're like, well, they can't understand why I would rent a house. I can afford to buy one. Yes, I can. Does not mean I should. And I had somebody tell me, this is on one of the discussion boards I was on. They're talking about financial planners. And they said, I cannot work with a financial planner who does not own their own house. I was like, well, why? Well, because that's a sign of achievement. And I'm like, oh, okay, like I'm not getting it, but all right. Ramit Sethi is talking about like he rents, like, and he's got millions. Like renting is not necessarily an evil thing, but people just have this baggage that comes with it, and I don't know. I'll freely admit. So I am a CFP. I do live in the financial world now. I did not come out of the financial world. I'm not one of those that was raised with finance and, spent all my time in finance. I come at it more from the behavioral side and trying to understand the way people think, because I think that's more important. And if you're going to quiz me on the math of it, I might not do as well as somebody who's been 100% on the finance side, and some of my colleagues will kind of like question, well, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? I'm like, we have different mindsets. I think the way you think about money is more important than kind of like the actual numbers. But that is part of my money mindset. And I think the challenge for you, if you're listening to this, is to kind of think about what do you care about and what do you want your impact to be and what do you want to use your money for? Like kind of what is the point? There are a lot of times in life, it's often around a death or a loss or other things where people start questioning like, what's the point? And I don't want you to have to wait to that point, but you can think about it and say, okay, what do I care about? What does my spouse care about? What's our mindset together? And what is the baggage we're bringing? Let's be real, because we all have it. What's the baggage we're bringing to a relationship around our money mindset? And how do we find something that works? It's not easy. And I'll be frank, many times you're going to work through this. You have to work through it with somebody else. I'm not sure you can 100% change your money mindset alone. If you want to dive in deeper, my new book, The Childfree Guide to Life and Money, has a whole half of it's on life, but a lot of it's on money mindset and behaviors, on the way you think. I will tell you, it doesn't have the answers. It's full of a lot of questions to ask. And you may need to work with a professional. I will say, when it comes to working with a professional, if you're working on your money mindsets, this is a good place for a financial therapist. People don't often think about that, but a lot of money stuff comes with trauma, comes with baggage around family, around life. And I'm going to tell you, that's above my pay grade. Like, if you come in with family trauma around money and all that, like I can help you through some of it, but like you're going to have to work through the trauma and the anxiety and other things. You might have to work with a professional on that. But I want you to know that just having more money is not going to fix it. You need to work through your mindset.
If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a rating or review. We'd love to keep the conversation going. Please let us know your thoughts wherever comments are available or email us at media@childfreewealth.com. To stay up to date, find and follow Childfree Wealth on social media. If you're interested in working with us, learn more by visiting our website, childfreewealth.com. We'll see you next time.